Hey there, my little crime goblins. Y'all know what to do. Grab a glass of sweet tea, sit on down, and let's talk about this case. I'm your host, Josie, and today we're diving into another serial killer case. So, get comfortable and let's get started. Have y'all ever had one of them days where you spill your coffee first thing in the morning and it just kind of spirals out of control from one thing to another and then another, and it like sets the tone for your entire day, or it tries to anyway, because that's where we started our date today. But that's okay, it turned around for sure, and now I'm here with y'all, which always makes me happy. So today, I don't have state facts for y'all, since this serial killer was a multi-state shithead. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to give y'all some random facts anyway. You never know, you might need them for trivia one day. So let's get it started. The period from 1970 to 2000 is often referred to as the golden age of serial murder, particularly in the United States due to a high number of cases during that time. It is estimated that the average person will come into contact with 36 murderers over his or her lifetime. Approximately 50% of murders in the U.S. go unsolved, which is crazy. 50%. And I'm throwing this one in here because I think it's precious. A group of porcupines is called a prickle. I think it's so cute. All right, let's hop into it. So let's talk about Samuel Little. Samuel Little was an American serial killer who was convicted of 8 murders and confessed to committing 93 murders between 1970 and 2005. The FBI has confirmed his involvement in at least 60 murders, which is the largest number of confirmed victims for any serial killer in American history. We're going to start off, like always, with a little bit of his background here. Samuel Little was born as Samuel McDowell on June 7th, 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. Samuel's mother, Bessie Mae Little, was a teenage prostitute who had abandoned him. Authorities believe that she might have given birth to him while she was in jail. The census from the year Little was born said Bessie Mae worked as a maid and his father was 19-year-old Paul McDowell. Soon after his birth, Little's family moved to Lorain, Ohio, where he was raised mainly by his grandmother. According to what Samuel has said, he started having sexual fantasies about strangling women as a child. So when he was a kid, he was thinking about this. And it started when he saw his kindergarten teacher touch her neck. What in the what? Just simply touching her neck did it for him. As a teenager, he started collecting true crime magazines depicting the strangulation of women. So, I mean, like, he has a history, okay? In 1956, he was convicted of breaking and entering into a property in Omaha, Nebraska. He was put in an institution for juvenile offenders. I was about to say defenders. No, offenders. His mama was listed on the bookend card as whereabouts unknown. So they didn't even know where she was at the time. But he did move to Florida to live with his mama in late 1960. He was working as a cemetery worker and an ambulance attendant. Little said that he had started traveling more widely and had more run-ins with the law. So he started getting arrested. He was arrested in 8 states for crimes that included driving under the influence, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and rape. So he was just doing it up, wasn't he? Samuel took up boxing during his time in prison and would refer to himself as a former prize fighter. So let's get into some of his crimes, the more serious crimes anyway. In 1961, Little was sentenced to 3 years in prison for breaking into a furniture store in Lorain. He was released in 1964. By 1975, he had been arrested 26 times in 11 states for crimes including theft, assault, attempted rape, fraud, and attacks on government officials. Wow. In 1982, Little was arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and he faced charges for the murder of 22-year-old Melinda Rose LaPree, who had gone missing in September of that year. A grand jury declined to indict him for her murder. However, while under investigation, Little was extradited to Florida and tried for the murder of 26-year-old Patricia Ann Mount, whose body had never been found, and that was in September of 82. Prosecution witnesses identified Little in court as a person who had spent time with Mount the night before her disappearance. But due to mistrust of witness testimonies, Little was acquitted in January of 84. So then he moved to California, where he stayed around the vicinity of San Diego. In October of 84, he was arrested for kidnapping, beating, and strangling 22-year-old Laurie Barrows, who survived. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, she survived. 1 month later, he was found by police in the backseat of his car with an unconscious woman, also beaten and strangled in the same location as the attempted murder of Barrows. Little served 2.5 years in prison for both crimes. That does not seem like a lot of crime time for that. Upon his release in February of 87, he immediately moved back to Los Angeles and committed at least 10 additional murders. So he didn't waste no time at all. Little was arrested on September 5th of 2012 at Wayside Christian Homeless Shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, and extradited to California to face a narcotics charge, after which authorities used DNA testing to establish that he was involved in the murders of Linda Alford, killed July 1st of 87, Audrey Nelson Everett, killed August 14th of 89, and Guadalupe Duarte Apodaca, killed on September 3rd of 89. All 3 women were killed and later found on the streets of Los Angeles. So he was, again, just going for it. He was extradited to Los Angeles, where he was charged on January 7th of 2013. A few months later, the police said Little was being investigated for involvement in 36 murders committed in the 80s, which until then that had been completely undisclosed. In connection with the new circumstances in Mississippi, the LaPree murder case was reopened. In total, Little was tested for involvement in 93 murders of women in all kinds of states, all the different states, okay? So he was traveling, he was getting around. Little was tried for the murders of Alford, Nelson, and Apodaca in September of 2014. The prosecution presented the DNA evidence as well as testimony of witnesses who were attacked by Little at different times throughout his criminal career. So they brought them all in. On September 25th of 2014, Little was found guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the day of the verdict, Little was still saying he was innocent. And before he died, he was serving a sentence in California State Prison, Los Angeles County. He did have some later confessions, like after he had already been found guilty of some of those crimes. And those later confessions were: November 9th of 2018, Little confessed to the 1996 fatal strangulation of Melissa Thomas. On November 13th of 2018, he was charged with the 94 murder of Denise Christie Brothers in Odessa, Texas, after having confessed to the crime to a Texas Ranger in May of 18. Little pled guilty to the murder of Brothers on December 13th and received another life sentence. The Ector County, Texas District Attorney and Wise County, Texas Sheriff's Office announced on November 13th that Little had confessed to dozens of murders and may have committed more than 90 across 14 states between 1970 and 2005. That is an insane amount of murders, honestly. On November 15th of 2018, Russell County, Alabama District Attorney announced that Little had earlier that month confessed to the 79 murder of 23-year-old Brenda Alexander, whose body was found in Phoenix City, Alabama. On November 16th of 2018, Macon, Georgia sheriffs announced that Little had credibly confessed to the 1977 strangling murder of an unidentified woman and the 1982 strangling murder of 18-year-old Fredonia Smith. In the fall of 2018, Little confessed to the 1982 murder of 55-year-old Dorothy Richards and the 1996 murder of 40-year-old Daisy McGuire. Both of their bodies were found in Houma, Louisiana. On November 19th of 2018, Harrison County, Mississippi Sheriff Troy Peterson said that Little had confessed to strangling 36-year-old Julia Critchfield in the Gulfport area in 1978 and dumping her body off a cliff. Lord have mercy. On November 20th of 2018, Lee County, Mississippi law enforcement officials announced that Little had admitted to killing 46-year-old Nancy Carol Stevens in Tupelo, Mississippi in 2005, and the case would be presented to the grand jury in January of 2019. On November 21st of 2018, Richland County, South Carolina authorities announced that Little had confessed to murdering 19-year-old Evelyn Weston, whose body was found near Fort Jackson, South Carolina in 1978. Little confessed to having killed 20-year-old Rosie Hill in Marion County, Florida in 1982. November 27th of 2018, the FBI announced that a violent criminal apprehension program team had confirmed 34 of Little's confessions and were working to match the remainder of Little's confessions to known murders or suspicious deaths. That is so crazy to me. It just is mind-boggling. Little began making the confessions in exchange for a transfer out of the Los Angeles County prison where he was being held. So he wanted something out of the deal, basically. One of the confessions included a previous cold case homicide in Prince George's County, Maryland. Previously, one of only 2 homicide cases in the county with unidentified victims. In December of 2018, Little was indicted for strangling Linda Sue Boards, age 23, to her death in May of 81 in Warren County, Kentucky. Her body was found May 15th of 81 near U.S. Route 68. One of Little's victims was identified in December of 2018 as Martha Cunningham of Knox County, Tennessee, who was 34 when Little murdered her in 75. On May 31st of 19, and Lord help me, I'm probably going to butcher this, Cuyahoga County, Ohio prosecutors announced indictments with 4 counts of aggravated murder and 6 counts of kidnapping that accused Little of killing Mary Jo Payton in 1984 and Rose Evans in 1991 in Cleveland. Both victims were strangled and dumped. This dude is a monster, I tell you. The body of Rose Evans, 32, was found August 24th of 91 in a vacant lot on East 39th Street. She left her hometown of Binghamtown, New York when she was 17. Evans had been strangled. So he strangled her, bless her soul. As for Payton, an anthropologist had to create a model of what she looked like, but she remained unidentified until 92 when Cleveland put her thumbprint in an FBI database and got a match. So they did do a model of what she looked like, but she was still just unidentified. Little had picked up Payton at a bar near East 105th and Euclid Avenues. He described Payton as a short, plump woman in her 20s with brown hair. Little confessed to killing another Cleveland woman in 1977 or 1978. The woman that was murdered in 77 or 78 was found March 18th of 83 in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. She was likely African American and somewhere between 17 and 35. The woman's body had been dumped down a grassy slope near a fence in a wooded area just off Interstate 27. Her body was found by a man walking his dog. Only her skeleton, some clothing, and jewelry remained. Little confessed to killing one woman in Akron, Ohio, and two in Cincinnati. Of the two women Little murdered in Cincinnati, one was identified as Anna Stewart, 33, whose body was dumped in Grove City, Ohio. Stewart was last seen October 6th of 81 getting out of a cab at General Hospital to see her sister, who was in the hospital. She was killed on October 11th. He killed the other woman between 1980 and 1999. The Jane Doe was anywhere from 15 to 50, as the details of her age and date of her murder are unclear. They were able to determine that she was African American, slender, wore glasses, and lived in the over-the-Rhine neighborhood of Cincinnati with a, as Little put it, heavy female Hispanic. He left her beside a cigarette billboard in Ohio. On June 7th of 19, Little was indicted in Hamilton County, Ohio for murdering the two women killed in Cincinnati. Little had drawn portraits of many women he killed. These portraits were released by the FBI in hopes of someone identifying the women, so they kind of put them out to the world, hoping they could solve some of these women's murders. At least one portrait solved a cold case in Akron, Ohio. In November of 2020, Little confessed to two Florida murders, one of which another man had been wrongfully convicted. So Little's just out here frolicking around while this man's sitting in prison for something he didn't do. On April 22nd of 22, a woman was killed in Memphis, Tennessee, whose body was found on the Arkansas side of the Mississippi River in 1990, was identified as 30-year-old Zena Marie Jones. So she was found April 22nd of 22, and it was suspected she was killed in 90. I genuinely don't understand how somebody like this can walk around free for so damn long. It's actually terrifying to think about how many people came into contact with this man. And he's just out here killing people. Has such a dark heart and mind. It's really scary. Well, y'all, I am thirstier than a hippo in the desert. Let me grab a sip of water and I'll be right back. Alright, I've rehydrated and ready to rock and roll. So we do have some confirmed victims to discuss as well. So Little had admitted to 93 different murders in total. And 60 deaths have been formally connected to him by the police. Y'all hold on, I gotta sneeze. So sorry. The majority of Little's victims were sex workers, substance users, or homeless individuals, and most of them were female. He claimed that he thought these victims wouldn't have as many people looking for them, which is so freaking dang sad. Despite the broad scope of his offending, Little was charged with and convicted of only 8 of the murders in total. They just did not have sufficient evidence on the others. Annie Lee Stewart, 32, was murdered October 11th of 81 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Little strangled her and disposed of her body in the woods behind some apartments in Grove City, Ohio. He was convicted of her murder on August 23rd, 19. Mary Jo Payton, age 21, was murdered in 84 after she encountered Little at a bar in Cleveland, Ohio. Little claimed that he and Payton left the bar together, and then he took her to an abandoned factory. He choked her there before throwing her body down a basement staircase. 2 workers from a nearby company discovered her body on July 3rd of 84. Little was convicted August 23rd of 2019. Then there was Carol Lynn Alford, age 41, who was murdered by Little in Los Angeles, California. Authorities discovered Little's first DNA match on her underwear and under her fingernails. On July 13th of 87, her body was discovered in a Los Angeles alley. From waist down, she was nude. Her daughter identified her body. She had been strangled to death. She also experienced other wounds, such as punch-related head injury from blunt force. He is brutal. Little was found guilty of the crime on September 25th of 2014. Then we have Audrey Nelson Everett, age 35, who was found in a dumpster behind a nightclub and restaurant in Los Angeles, California on August 14th of 89. There was nothing found that could be used to identify her body, and she was also naked from the waist down. She had been repeatedly hit on the head before being forcefully strangled. DNA linked Little to the crime, and he was convicted on September 25th of 2014. Guadalupe Apodaca, 46, was found on September 3rd of 1989 at an abandoned auto repair shop in Los Angeles. A boy had been kicking a soccer ball against the building and peered into the windows and saw her body. Authorities had determined that Little had kneeled on her chest and strangled her with his hands, causing her to have a seizure. She was again nude from the waist down, and she had blood in her anal cavity as well. DNA did link Little to that crime, and he was convicted on September 25th of 2014. Zena Marie Jones, 30, was a missing woman found murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas on July 28, 1990. She had gone missing July 6th in Memphis, Tennessee. On the Arkansas side of the Mississippi River, close to the shore and about 8 feet from the river's mile marker, a fisherman discovered the victim. Little admitted to killing her and provided a sketch in 2018. He claimed she was a prostitute who was between the ages of 28 and 29 and that he had picked her up at a Memphis hotel. Y'all, he then dropped the victim into the river once he entered Arkansas. On August 23rd of 19, he was found guilty of her homicide. She was identified on April 2022 after her family noticed a resemblance between the composite sketch drawn by Little and Jones. Rose Evans, 32, was murdered in Cleveland, Ohio on or around August 24th of 91. Little came across Evans while driving and offered her a ride. So she was probably walking and he stopped and picked her up. He took her to an abandoned area and strangled her in his car. He was convicted of her murder August 23rd of 19. And then we have Denise Christie Brothers, age 32. She was a mother of 2 who was killed in Odessa, Texas on February 2nd, 94. Brothers had been reported missing on January the 1st of 94 and she had been strangled. Little pled guilty to her killing and received his 4th life sentence on December 13th of 2018. So Little had confessed to various other murders all throughout the country. So as we can see by going over that, he was all over the place. We do know the names of some of the victims, but not all of them. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on them before we continue because I feel like it's only right to mention them as well. That is one thing we are not going to do is forget the victims. We had Mary Jo Brosley of Homestead, Florida, Linda in Miami, Florida, Marianne in Miami, Florida, Donna or Sarah, they were uncertain her name, in Kendall, Florida, an unnamed white female in Prince George's County, Maryland, Sarah Brown in New Orleans, Louisiana, Agatha White Buffalo in Omaha, Nebraska, Kat in Savannah, Georgia, Leila Etta Bryant in Charleston, South Carolina, Martha Cunningham in Knox County, Tennessee, Emily in Miami, Florida, Leanne Helms in Houston, Texas, Yvonne Pless in Macon, Georgia, Clara Birdlong in Pascagoula, Mississippi, an unnamed black female in Cleveland, Ohio, Julia Critchfield in Harrison County, Mississippi, Evelyn Weston in Columbia, South Carolina, Brenda Alexander in Phoenix City, Alabama, Linda Sue Boards of Smiths Grove, Kentucky, Patricia Parker in Dade County, Georgia, Fredonia Smith in Macon, Georgia, Rosie Hill in Marion County, Florida, Patricia Ann Mount in Alachua County, Florida, Dorothy Richard in Houma, Louisiana, Melinda Lepre in Pascagoula, Mississippi, 2 unnamed black females, one in New Orleans, Louisiana, and one in San Bernardino, California. Augie Gortz in Savannah, Georgia. Granny is what he called her, in Los Angeles, California. Linda Bennett in Owenton, Kentucky. Alice Denise Duval in Los Angeles, California. I promise we're getting there. Roberta Tandarich in Akron, Ohio. Sorry if I'm butchering these names. Alice Denise Taylor and Tracy Lynn Johnson in Gulfport, Mississippi, Ruth in North Little Rock, Arkansas, an unnamed black female in Las Vegas, Nevada, Ruby Dean Lane in Perry, Florida, Jolanda Jones in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, Melissa Thomas in Opelousas, Louisiana, Daisy McGuire in Houma, Louisiana, T Money in Los Angeles, California, Priscilla Baxter Jones in West Memphis, Arkansas, and Nancy Carol Stevens in Tupelo, Mississippi. I felt like it was important to mention them. We do not want to brush them away and not even mention them. So, believe it or not, Little had a long-term girlfriend named Aurelia Dorsey, who supported them both by shoplifting over the years. But let's keep her name in mind. And there's a reason I'm telling you that. So, let's back up a little bit. May 28th, 1971, Little was arrested in Cleveland with his girlfriend at the time, named Lucy Madero, and they were charged with robbery of a gas station. Well, while in jail, Madero confided in her cellmate, who was named Dorsey. Yes, the previously mentioned Dorsey. But she mentioned to her that she would be testifying against Little in the robbery case. So this Dorsey chick decided to give that information to Little's attorney. How freaking shitty of her. In 1972, when the case went to trial, Madero testified against Little, but his defense team was able to plan for it with the help of the information given to them by Dorsey. You know, of course, they're going to use it to their advantage. Little was eventually found not guilty. Dorsey and Little were together until she died of a brain hemorrhage in Los Angeles. And then Little died December 30th of 2020 in a Los Angeles County area hospital. The California Department of Corrections did not indicate a cause of death for Little, but he did suffer from diabetes, heart problems, and various other health conditions. So honestly, any of them could have taken him. I legitimately don't understand how these types of people are just walking around among us. It just goes to show you, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. You never truly know people. I do wonder if Dorsey knew what type of person Little was. They sounded like quite a pair. You know, sometimes there are parts of me who feel bad for like the child versions of the people who commit these crimes, because like oftentimes their awful childhoods help shape them and shape them into the monsters that they are, that they become. But then I think of like all the victims and their loved ones, and I feel way worse for them, of course, but it does leave me torn in some ways. I think that we can show empathy and understanding for the children versions of some of these people while still recognizing how absolutely terrible they became. At the end of the day, my heart and love goes out to the victims and their loved ones. We should just all take time to hold on to each other a little harder and a little bit longer every day. You never know what the future holds. That was a little bit off topic, and I do apologize. My squirrel brain has done kicked in for the night. So I'm going to let y'all go for tonight. Y'all have a good night. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Sweet Tea and Crime. I hope you enjoyed our time together today. I know I sure did. Do you have a case that you want us to talk about? Feel free, if I could talk, to email it to sweetteaandcrime1, that's the number 1, @gmail.com, or shoot it to me in my comments. Don't forget to grab another glass of sweet tea and join me next time for more crime. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring. I'm your host, Josie. Be good and stay safe.